Now, when they found that ancient Greek computer thing, what is that called?
The Antikythera mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, that testifies to a lost navigational skill that we have not taken account of before.
Incredibly complex, and it took a long time for them to figure out what that even is.
Yeah.
In 1901, a group of sponge divers searching for sea sponges off the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon something far more significant, a 2,000-year-old shipwreck filled with artifacts. Among the haul was a corroded chunk of bronze and wood about the size of a shoebox. But what started off as a weird find spiraled into something researchers have been trying to find the answer for decades. And well, it's not good. At first, when Antikythera was found, it was overlooked, overshadowed by statues and gold. But in 1902, an archaeologist named Valerio Stais noticed something unusual: gears. Not just one or two, but an intricate system of them, packed inside what would later be called the Antikythera mechanism. For decades, scientists were baffled by it. It looked like a mechanical device, but nothing like it had been seen in the ancient world. The idea that the Greeks had built a functional analog computer over 2,000 years ago was unthinkable. It wasn't until X-ray scans and modern reconstructions were done in the early 2000s that the true nature of the device was revealed. The mechanism was designed to predict astronomical events with extreme accuracy, tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. It could even predict eclipses and the Olympic Games cycle. So why is solving this mystery not good? Because nothing like it was ever seen again. The knowledge behind it vanished, and for over 1,000 years, humanity never recreated anything as advanced. So science and technology don't always move forward. They can be lost. This isn't just a story about an ancient machine. It's a warning about how easily knowledge can disappear. The shipwreck's contents suggest the mechanism may have belonged to a wealthy individual or scholar, possibly used for navigation or astronomical calculations. But the fact that it was found in fragments, with no records of its existence, raises unsettling questions. Did the Greeks build more? Was this technology wiped out by war, the fall of civilizations, or something else? Well, if there's one person willing to really dig deep into it, it's Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan and Graham Hancock's discussion on the Antikythera mechanism took a deep dive into what this ancient device really represents. Rogan brought it up first, calling it an ancient Greek computer thing.
When they found that ancient Greek computer thing, what is that called?
The Antikythera mechanism.
And Hancock quickly confirmed its name, explaining that it testifies to a lost navigational skill we've largely overlooked.
Again, that testifies to a lost navigational skill that we have not taken account of before.
The conversation quickly shifted to what the mechanism actually does, with Hancock emphasizing that it wasn't just a random artifact, but a fully functional, gear-driven system designed to track planetary movements. He suggested it may have been a navigational device, possibly helping ancient sailors determine their location based on celestial positions.
It tracks the movements of the planets. It's a navigational device. It's a geared, cogged system that allows you to track the passage of time and figure out where you are. It's some kind of navigational device. It's not fully understood.
When Rogan asked how old it was, Hancock guessed around 500 BCE, though most experts place it closer to 150 BCE. But the exact date wasn't his main focus. His bigger argument was that something this advanced doesn't just appear out of nowhere. If the Greeks had built something so intricate, there had to have been more. The knowledge and craftsmanship behind it couldn't have been limited to a single device. This led Hancock to a theory that intrigued Rogan even more. What if this was secret technology? Hancock proposed that Greek ship owners and navigators might have kept this device hidden from the public, much like how modern governments classified military technology. He compared
We find ourselves in the most amazing of times. 2023. Even the numerical date still sounds like one from science fiction. We have technologies that enable us to communicate across the world instantaneously, medicines that boggle the mind, and scientists even proclaiming coming advancements where machine and human unite to benefit humanity. Whether we think these things are for good or not is unimportant, it seems. The future is beyond our control to a large degree. Progress is inevitable and for the greater good if we are to heed the words of the world organizations such as the World Economic Forum. But some of us are looking to the past. We are looking to ancient evidence that causes us to ask many questions. Questions that have the possibility to divide. Families, friends, work colleagues, and educators can all suddenly turn against a person who decides to question the shape of our home, our world. Why is this subject so taboo? Up until 500 years ago, it was commonly accepted that the Earth was the center of the universe. The sun and the moon revolved around us in the sky, and we lived on a stationary, flat Earth. Some of the oldest books in existence, the Torah, Bible, Vedas, and many ancient texts, even describe the Earth being flat and immovable. Nearly every culture and religion had its own mimicry of this belief to varying degrees. There is a Vedic map from the 1900s that illustrates a flat Earth with other Earths around it, which are hidden by ice walls. There are so many stories that are there to show us that questioning the globe theory is actually a valid thing to do. One that scientists should embrace, not ridicule. So, why does this area of science have so much negative stigma attached to it? To question the heliocentric model, the theory that the sun is the center of the universe and all its relevant theories that help to back it up, can bring responses that range from complete ridicule to utter horror, as if you are akin to a Holocaust denier. No one wants to be ridiculed, and they definitely do not want to offend to the degree that this topic can bring. There is no reason for the scientific community to see the topic as ridiculous. Scientists are seriously trying to prove and or disprove so many things, even the existence of the Creator, and strangely, no ridicule is seen there. So why the flat Earth? We don't know. Maybe they protest too much and maybe they are hiding something. We won't know until the flat Earth community can be taken seriously and intelligently. That is not too much to ask, is it? The globe has been flooding our consciousness since the invention of the silver screen and later the television. The globe Earth is seen on film logos, food advertising, and airlines, just to name a few. Science fiction novels, film, TV, and comics all continue to bombard us with planets that are immeasurably far from Earth, all globes, all hurling through space and time. We have been inundated with the globe since childhood. We are taught it as a fact, when they fail to tell us that it's still just a theory. As is gravity, relativity, wormholes, black holes, string theory, etc., etc. All these ideas have had to be theorized about to try to make sense of the globe and its relation to its environment, the universe. A psychologist will tell you that if someone repeats an idea or a phrase often enough, it becomes a belief that is very hard to remove from your psyche. This is part of the process of what is commonly called brainwashing. No one wants to admit they have been the victim of brainwashing, but unfortunately it's a very common effect used on the human mind. From advertising agencies to governments, schools, religious cults, and many more areas of society. The field of behavioral science is being used to make people change their ideas about so many things. We see changes in how society sees religion, and medical procedures such as abortions, gender realignment, to name a few very current cultural changes. 100 years ago, these things would never have even been heard of and would be seen as terrible. Is it a natural evolution of society, or does society have its mind changed from the top down? It doesn't seem so strange to consider that the heliocentric model was a programmed idea to change the role of humanity as a special creation on Earth to nothing more than meaningless results of evolution, from a random, meaningless explosion floating on a blue speck in an ever-expanding universe. There are many scientists that have spoken for or have had their theories used to create the heliocentric theory. From Isaac Newton, Johannes Kepler, and Albert Einstein, and promoted today by modern mainstream scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Stephen Hawking, Bill Nye, etc. These theories are promoted by the mainstream science community as fact to keep the population on their spinning ball. The modern scientists' names are given almost rock star status, and they refuse to acknowledge that there is a debate to be had with the flat Earth community. The flat Earth community is portrayed by mainstream science as cult-like and ignorant, when in reality the opposite is more than true. A typical flat Earth proponent will have been brought up to totally believe in the Disney-style globe just like everybody else. They usually have the ability to use critical thought and see new information as a reason to get excited about exploring the possibilities of holding a new idea in their minds. They hold the value of scientific reasoning as central to their ideas. They are good at researching and evaluating their research to the extent that, despite not being university graduates in astronomy or astrophysics, they can be seen as an expert in these fields as they have spent many years studying them. It's very hard to find someone who is brave enough to stand up and say, "The Earth is flat," who hasn't done hours and hours of research to back the statement up. Why is it so hard for others to let go of their belief system? Because, simply speaking, it is hard to let go of any old belief system, especially if the new one is as challenging as society has made the geocentric model look. Regardless of why society has made the model look so idiotic, they have. How do we get out of this bind and open our minds to the possibilities? Personally, I think it's easy. You give it a chance and simply listen to the ideas and choose whether it's for you or not. If we don't give another's ideas a chance, we could lose our freedom of thought, simply because we have been encouraged to think something was stupid. No one should be told what to think. It's always ours to choose. Well, you are in for a surprise. Flat Earth science, research, and experiments are based on logic and truth, not pseudoscience. Be prepared to have your mind blown.
"2,000 years ago, a shipwreck created a time capsule. Hidden beneath the waves, untouched by time. The secrets it held would challenge our understanding of the past and reveal the incredible ingenuity of our ancestors. Journey with us as we dive into the depths of history, uncovering the enigmatic ancient marvel that defies the limits of its time. Rediscovered a century ago by another shipwreck. Nature seemed to guard its secrets, preserving a device that would rewrite our understanding of ancient technology. The mechanical realm beckons us to unlock its mysteries. Through history, archaeology, astrophysics, and astronomy, we embark on a quest to decipher the intricate workings of the past. The pieces of the puzzle come together as we explore the convergence of art, science, and philosophy. Prepare for an extraordinary journey where hidden truths come to light. The secrets of the mechanical realm will redefine our perception of history and reshape our appreciation of the past and shape of our Earth. Get ready to witness the unveiling of the extraordinary, a geocentric, stationary, flat Earth working model that has defied the passage of time.
So, according to the historical accounts, Greek sponge divers stopped close to Antikythera, a tiny island in the Aegean Sea. Back in the 1900s, an underwater suit consisted of a thick, heavy suit and a large metal helmet with glass windows. Fresh air was pumped into the helmet through a pipe by someone on the boat. So one man descends, looking for sponge, but soon enough comes back up horrified, ranting about the pile of dead bodies he had seen on the seafloor. So the captain went down to take a look for himself and discovered that these were not dead bodies, but ancient bronze and marble statues. It turned out to be the discovery of one of the largest hoards of ancient treasure ever made. The artifacts that were found on board this old wreck are today in display at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. One of the artifacts looked like a strange cracked rock and was put aside with many other pieces. And it wasn't until the 1950s that someone noticed inscriptions. According to recorded accounts of the time, this appeared to be some sort of clockwork device that simply shouldn't have existed in the ancient world.
The Antikythera mechanism is an ancient computer. It could accurately calculate the motions of the heavenly luminaries. It's only built with metal and wood, and it doesn't use electricity. Predicting the patterns of what we see in the sky above us requires some sophisticated calculations, and it's already been done in Greece 2,000 years ago. This ancient computer, this ancient machine, is only about the size of a shoebox, and inside are dozens of interlocking gears, and on the outside, on the front and the back, are several synchronized pointers. And it was built by someone who could decode the solar system by a hand cranking.
What's a more better advised ways of building a machine precisely mimic this behavior? It also reveals a far greater mastery of complex miniaturization of mechanical devices than anyone dare to think existed in ancient Greece and Rome around the 1st century BC. It has sparked the imagination of thousands of anthropologists and historians as to the many secrets that may yet remain in European history. The mechanism's calculations occur when the gears with different numbers of teeth work together to recreate the appropriate relative motion of different celestial objects. The side handle meant to be operated by a person. It turns a main gear which represents the solar gear. Power from this gear is variously reduced or enlarged by subsequent connected gears to produce the motion of different objects, including the sun, the moon, the planets, and the constellations. In order to achieve this, a dazzling display of mechanical workmanship was required.
Everyone today is familiar with a digital computer, a machine that deals in ones and zeros, a few million at a time. But have you heard about analog computers, or perhaps not as much as you probably should have? An analog computer is a computational device that uses mechanical principles rather than digital maths to make calculations. You may have seen one or two in your lifetime, like a wind-up or a clock, for example. Quite how long these devices have been around is debatable, but most agree that the first analog computers, mostly astronomical clocks, were first invented in around 14th century. That was until one discovery in 1901 near Antikythera in Greece that changed our understanding of the history of computers forever. It is so shocking that nearly 70 years of mainstream historians and technologists dismissed it as either a fake or a fluke. That was until one group of dedicated researchers unveiled its mysteries and proved that the ancient Greeks did indeed possess complex analog computers of their own. That's nearly a millennium and a half earlier than we thought.
Dr. Derek Price of Yale University was one of the first to bring the Antikythera mechanism's true historical significance to the public's attention. Price is a pioneer, and we all owe him a great debt of gratitude because for the first 50 years, scholars, scientists, and historians were having a really hard time putting the pieces of this puzzle back together. Price was the first person to examine the device carefully enough to have a basic understanding of what its true capabilities really were. And he said that this was as spectacular as if we had opened King Tut's tomb to find decayed, but recognizable parts of a combustion engine. And because it was too far outside the realm of what academics were comfortable with, very few people were prepared to think seriously about the Antikythera before Price. A scientific historian interested in the history of scientific technology He set out in about 1958 to examine the Greek years to determine just what they were used for. He notices that the front dial is divided into 12 sections when he sees that Eli is printed on one of the sections. Eli is the Greek word for Libra. And then further around the dial, he notices two of the letters for the Greek word for Virgo, leading Price to conclude that what he was looking at was a representation of the 12 zodiac constellations. And though there are a total of 88 constellations noted and recognized today, they were all documented 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. But these are the 12 that provide the annual path of the sun, along with most of the lunar and planetary activity. And this is called the ecliptic. The sun tells us the time of the day, the moon tells us the time of the month, and the stars tell us the time of the year.
It preceded such like gears by more than 1,000 years. This ancient Greek device is now known as the Antikythera mechanism, in honor of the land where it was discovered. Even today, more than a century after its discovery, scientists are still studying it to comprehend what it does. Measuring gears is a difficult task, but our world would be very different without these gears and the people who had the patience, knowledge, and understanding to make them. So, during the Industrial Revolution, they were the driving force behind the development of the factory machinery, which made assembly lines possible. Without gears, there would also be no trains or automobiles. Prior to the discovery of the Antikythera mechanism, the earliest complex gear trains were discovered in European clocks around the 1400s, when the Middle Ages were just giving way to the Renaissance. Although this ancient Greek computer is 1,000 years older, it contains gears that are just as complex as those found in medieval clocks. In our modern times, you will still find gears in grandfather clocks, analog watches, looks, and in telescope focus adjustment.
One of the intriguing things about the Antikythera mechanism is how they considered carefully how to make it both small enough and functional. X-rays of the crusty metal shows 6 smaller gears attached to the main drive gear, known as a gear train. So you have a 64-tooth gear moving a 38-tooth gear, moving this gear, moving this gear, moving this gear, moving this gear, achieving the same ratio of 254 to 19. The discovery that the sun and the moon orbit the same points in the sky is attributed to a Greek astronomer named Meta. The Metonic cycle is deeply ingrained in the Antikythera mechanism. It is 254 tropical months and 19 solar years, which is the amount of time it takes the planets to rotate around each other. To think about this and to see how gears can calculate ratios, think of a large gear with 254 teeth and a much smaller gear with 19 teeth. 19 turns of the large gear makes 254 turns on the smaller gear. It's essentially simple math, so the division can be broken down into chunks instead of done all at once.
Gear wheels and the gears are very visible on the X-rays. This could represent the sky at any given time, or used to determine a date from a specific rotation of the luminaries. With just one button, you could reproduce all the movement of the visible luminaries, the sun and the moon. The device is a miniature mechanical representation of the cosmos. Geocentric astronomy at the time of Antikythera had been established for a while. They knew precisely the cycle of each of the luminaries, including the issue of the offset between the lunar and the solar calendars identified by the Greeks. Over the course of 19 years or 19 solar years, there were precisely 235 lunar months, and that was fine-tuned a century later. If we take 4 times the Metonic cycle, which is 4 into 19, which equals 76, then we remove 1 day, then we have the concurrence of both the lunar and the solar cycle. That is much more precise. And it's funny as all these numbers, the 19 and the 235 and the 76, are all noted on the machine on the inscription.
Price's team was able to produce custom X-rays to view the internal components of the device without damaging it further by doing so. And he concludes that the point of representing the sun moves through one full cycle, which is 1 year with 5 turns of the side dial. And the main drive wheel moves the sun pointer around the zodiac dial, starting a gear train calculating the motion of the moon. The second pointer is the moon pointer, and it's on a coaxial shaft. That's a differential. Turning one side handle moons, both pointers around the zodiac dial at their appropriate speeds, according to how the moon mechanism was calculated from the movement of the moon in relation to the sun. Because the ancient Greeks very closely observed the moon's phases, just like every other early civilization before them. They all counted and bundled their days according to the moon. They gauged the natural rhythms in the realm according to what they saw the moon doing. And the moon serves as a simple timekeeper, but the Antikythera mechanism can forecast when and where the moon will appear in the sky. Making a reasonable calendar and balancing lunar and solar cycles were two of the ancient Greek astronomers' main objectives. The moon takes roughly 27 hours and 8 days to appear in the same location in the sky, and this is called the tropical monthly compared to the sun's back, and the sidereal monthly compared to the stars. And because the new moon is not visible, it takes 29 days and 12 hours to cycle back from full to full. They added a mechanism to the Antikythera mechanism that displays the waxing and waning of the moon's phases, and it required a smaller gear in addition to the sun and moon pointer. And this idea hadn't been seen for another 1,400 years later, when we start to notice it in astronomical clocks from the Middle Ages. This original hardware was designed 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece, but the cosmos is the software that runs it, and their detailed knowledge of it comes from an even earlier culture.
This must have been a very precious piece of equipment that may have been on their way to sell. Maybe it was on order from a landowner, one of the many errands. This machine appears to be a calendar that could have been used to keep track of the seasons, which was especially important for farmers. Also to predict when the new moon would appear, which is the beginning point for every month. The Antikythera mechanism employed 6 gears to achieve the ratio of 254/19, beginning with a 64-tooth gear wheel at the center. The formula 254 months in 19 years is created by adding these ratios together. Some have claimed that it is so complex that the Greeks could never have created it. Some even assert that it was made by extraterrestrials. According to a best-selling book from the 1960s, highly developed aliens must have brought it to Earth from another planet. The idea put forth by Erich von Däniken and others like him, that anything complex or interesting from antiquity was brought by aliens, is simply absurd, and thus being disproved by other academics. You've replaced a simple hypothesis that the ancient people were intelligent and diligent with a more complex one, namely that these aliens exist. The complexity of the ancient device still astounds modern engineers, so why not choose the more straightforward theory? Although we picture them as primitives, they were not. They were individuals there, with extraordinary minds, who could invent incredible things, like Archimedes.
The Antikythera mechanism explains the moon's variable speed in particular. It's a very subtle effect that most casual observers would never notice. Over the course of a month, the moon gradually speeds up and slows down in its path across the sky. The geometrical formula to work out the moon's variable speed was created by a man named Hipparchus, who lived in the 2nd century BC, 100 years before Archimedes. Without Hipparchus, or a man of his caliber, the Antikythera mechanism was not possible. He played a key role in taking the translated Babylonian data and transforming it into a set of working models that actually worked to predict the positions of the moon and the sun.
I believe, as do many others, that this mechanism was built by one of the most well-known and most brilliant inventors in all of Greek history, Archimedes. Archimedes' genius is renowned. He was a practical inventor of many things, including innovative and very effective weaponry. For warfare at sea, he engineered many weapons that were used to sink enemy ships. For ground warfare, he engineered and constructed enormous car-like war machines. These machines were the precursors to today's armored vehicles and tanks. As well as being an engineer, Archimedes was an astronomer and a mathematician. Research connects Archimedes to the Antikythera mechanism. Archimedes hailed from Sicily, which provided the names for 7 of the mechanism's month designations. These months' names were used solely in Sicily, though similar ones were used in parts of Greece. Archimedes was fascinated with mechanical gears and how they interacted. As an astronomer, he was also fascinated with the movements of the luminaries. There are written accounts that he constructed other devices that were very similar to the Antikythera mechanism. Given the widespread knowledge that the ancients possessed of the stationary, flat with features Earth realm, which is the only model that works in perfect, flawless synchronicity with the Antikythera mechanism, it's a safe bet to conclude that it was one of Archimedes' many brilliant inventions. Archimedes did travel and likely drew inspiration, knowledge, and information from other even older cultures in their texts and literatures. The ancients were very advanced and they knew the workings of the cosmos intimately. Much can be learned from them even today.
A series of canted gears was used to represent the cycles of each celestial object. Circular movements around a fixed center of mass, which was the way in which the Greek mathematicians explained the apparent motion of the sun and planets around the Earth. It is not far-fetched to imagine that such devices had become really widespread in the Greek Roman world. Some astronomers like Copernicus or Galileo might eventually have been inspired to solve the problem to keep such models for functioning periods longer than a few decades. Indeed, it was the invention of precise timekeeping and exact observations of the heavens that
in 250 BC, they were capable of doing this. The level of mass required is amazing, as the Antikythera mechanism involves complex movements. The person who designed the machine had a very long history of performing calculations. That is certainty, because in order to represent all these complex phenomena in such a simple way, but yet very difficult to design and implement, clearly this was not a dry run. The orbit of the moon around the Earth is not circular, was elliptic, which gives it a variable speed from the Earth. This is complicated to reproduce, as the gears generate constant circular movements. The wheels gear up one inside the other, but we also know how to do that. They are luminary gears, but while they turn, they will drift away, so they take more time to get to the other gears, so it slows down. Then as it moves closer, it goes faster, so they manage to get these gears to breathe while working. They move away when they move closer, and what does it actually do? It changes the gear ratio. It created something that is absolutely incredible in simplicity, and at the same time it is genius, and our own civilization missed it entirely. Gears inside that shows extraordinary techniques and creativity. The research and the development, meaning the design of the object, relies on the knowledge we have to begin with. Because we are learning while working on it, it can take forever, it can take an entire lifetime. What they don't dare to say in front of the cameras in fear of upsetting some archaeologists is the level of mass required to design such a mechanism.
The Antikythera mechanism is more than just an impressive piece of ancient engineering. It's based on observations made thousands of years ago. How and why could they have noticed and calculated and recorded this information, then translated it into the precise movements of so many aspects of the cosmos? These records were used by the Greeks centuries later to build geometric models to foretell future and past planetary stellar alignments. And a blending of these two traditions can be seen in the Antikythera mechanism. This is one of the most complicated parts of the whole entire apparatus. They needed to offset that second gear. So the first and second gears move with a 1-to-1 ratio, but the second gear has a pin that fits a slot of third gear, which is off-centered. And this pin and slot system enables them to achieve that variable speed. Can you imagine waking up like over 2,000 years ago and decided just to make this without any blueprints or schematics. The Antikythera mechanism was lightweight, compact, and portable, but they managed to get nearly all of their knowledge of astronomy into this one device. Their theory of almost everything in a box, similar to today's modern laptop computers. And here we believe this could be the entire working model.
Even then, the gears of calculate movements of the moon and simultaneously calculate the moon's changing phases adds a whole other layer of engineering complexity. It's a very impressive mechanism. Every gear represents a different luminary. It traces not only their movements as individuals, but also in relation to each other, just like you see them in the night sky. But there's no gear for the Earth itself. Is that because we are the base of the mechanism? Whoever designed this piece of technology was fully aware of what he was observing, the paths, the speeds, and the distances between the luminaries, so precise, it's still able to predict the positions after so many years. For example, ancient construction like the pyramids, which they built to line up with the constellation of Orion, the Antikythera mechanism would have been a very useful tool to predict where the stars would be at a specific time of the year, making a perfect alignment. Here was Greek genius at its height. The Greek and divine cosmos were presented through mechanism by scientists who wished to show that there was no mathematical challenge beyond their abilities. We know that the Greek society was the birthplace of the art, architecture, and culture that is a foundation of our modern world. Now we also know that it was the cradle of advanced technology. Derek Price, who pioneered the early research on the mechanism, said, "It's a bit frightening to know that just before the fall of their great civilization, the ancient Greeks have come so close to our own age, not only in their thought, but also in their scientific technology."
Standing outside of a star fort in St. Augustine, Florida, there are literally star forts everywhere across the surface of our Earth. We are people who had horse and buggy technology. They also didn't have power tools. They had to build this stuff by candlelight with hammers and chisels. Do you really buy that? I don't. People of the past were far advanced when it comes to architecture and artwork and the machines that they made, especially the Antikythera mechanism.
The Antikythera mechanism abilities are known, and it's now believed that there were probably additional gears and dials which did not survive the device's underwater burial. However, modern reconstruction shows that the mechanism would have been capable of reconciling the solar and lunar calendars, representing the precise positions of each planet and the Sun, and the Moon over a period of 19 years. The mechanism would have been capable of predicting solar and lunar eclipses, and appears to have been able to show the timing of the ancient Olympic Games, based on assumptions found on the back of the mechanism. 5 dials on the back of the mechanism demonstrate the 235 synodic months, showing that the Greeks understood 235 lunar months to be extremely close to 90 solar years. This allows the user to set the current solar day onto the front of the dial and have the date translated to the lunar day within the 235-month cycle. A tablet has an instruction manual attached to it, and you presumably set it up. You have to calibrate it to your specific location, exactly much like a modern laptop, where you set the time zone and so forth, and according to your theory, you look it up to something that powers or heat or moves against at a consistent rate, and on one side you have arms for the planet, the moon, and the sun, exactly as these arms sweep around the dial, like the arms of a clock. And what I thought was super cool was that the arm for the moon not only sweeps around like a clock hand, showing you the position of the moon in the sky. But it also spins around its own axis, and it has a little ball on, and that looks like the moon, like half black and half white. And while it spins around it itself, it shows you the phase of the moons as well. Yes, we have a dial that rotates at the same time around two axes. It regulates the phase of the moon or the age of the moon.
It's far beyond what is usually attributed to the ancient Greeks. Otherwise, it would have been needed thousands. They would have needed thousands of prototypes to reach such a precise result. But how to go from a design to a mechanical implementation, that is still a mystery nowadays. Yes, because in practice it is way more complicated than it looks. Take the main wheel, it has 223 teeth. How do you easily break down a circle into 223 equal parts? The Antikythera mechanism is not a unique object. It's unique for us since it's the only one that has reached us today, thanks to the Antikythera shipwreck. Other than that, there would have been dozens. Now with the knowledge of this device, some Greek scriptures sound different. A book by the scribes of the astronomer who lived roughly at the time as supposed the implementation of the Antikythera mechanism, heavy note. When you read this text, you feel like you are reading a description of the Antikythera mechanism. It proves that the tools for machines did not survive the test of time. It was 2,000 years ago. Egypt 5,000 years ago. All of the technology could have been lost. It was saved because it sank. That was the paradox. Had it saved on land, it would have been melted, recycled to do something else. That was the rule of all metallic objects that were no longer useful. The device would still work had it not remained underwater. How could a major chapter in the history of human engineering have been lost from our records? That the device is lost is one thing, but the very idea of the existence was lost or done purposely. What's even more surprising is that the discovery was almost entirely overlooked by the archaeologists. If you ask a classical archaeologist what is the relationship of the elders was to the technology, at the best they would mention architecture. We can't miss Acropolis, obviously. For the elders, the theory prevailed and the tangible work was for the slaves. That's the typical discourse which had continued since the Romans. The Antikythera mechanism questions the discourse and forces us to reread and also rewrite the number of things. What a surprise if Antikythera mechanism makes us reconsider the evolution of human science and technology.
On its rear face, Greek scientists of 2,000 years ago fashioned a computer mechanism that displays a calendar that follows a 19-year, 235-month metonic cycle of the moon that predicts the precise moment, location, magnitude, and color of the eclipses. And on the fur, they represented the universe as they saw it at the birth, with the five planets, the sun and the moon performing the complicated steps of their dance throughout the heavens. But what I find intriguing is that there's no historical records of anything that led up to the Antikythera mechanism's inner workings. Something so advanced, with nothing half advanced, and they only have one. There's no simple version that shows us just the sun, or just the moon, or just the sun and moon together. They just have this amazing clock all of a sudden. And it's interesting to note that the ship carrying the Antikythera mechanism stopped there in the 1st century BC. So is it a coincidence that the Library of Alexandria was burned in 48 BC, around 800 miles away, destroying volumes of history that still can't be accounted for? And do coincidences really happen? That sounds very convenient. But just to get the precision of this device, there must have been trial and errors. The Antikythera mechanism is accurate to within 1 degree in 500 years. So since the sun moves at 15 degrees an hour, or 1 degree every 4 minutes, we see that the Antikythera mechanism is accurate to within 1/2 a second a year. In comparison to today's watches, which lose 3 seconds of accuracy a day, which means they lose that 1% accuracy in 80 days. For over 500 years, there's no comparison. Well, I guess that's what made one luxury company buy all the rights to dive the shipwreck site, because they need to know just what the ancient Greeks knew about Tarot and the sky clock that it represents. There are multiple ancient coffins with figures that appear to be wearing wristwatches, and the bigger ones have more detail, and the smaller ones have less detail. And I'm not sure what the mainstream explanation for any of this is, or if there even is one. They probably just glance right over it, call it jewelry.
This is a question. Why does he have a watch on? Isn't that a watch?
How dare you? Impossible.
What is that?
It's jewelry.
It looks like a watch. I mean, maybe it's jewelry, but it's on his wrist, and it's a circle, and it's with a band.
Right.
I mean, what is that?
Mini Antikythera mechanism.
It looks like my watch.
It does. It does.
That's crazy.
But, of course, the explanation is like, of course not. Just jewelry. But it does look like it, doesn't it?
Well, it just makes sense that if they developed weapons and they developed clothing and they developed shelters, if they had the sophistication to be able to construct these buildings, why wouldn't they be able to construct a watch?
Right.
An automatic watch.
In the Antikythera mechanism, the calculation of the lunar orbit and the phases is intriguing. Apart from the phases, it shows the calculation of the moon's position against the fixed stars, and finally its differing speed in animalistic months. In the course of the year, the sun moves in front of the starry sky to the 12 zodiac signs. Likewise the moon, but not in the course of the year, but once a month. At the beginning, the solar and the lunar pointers overlap. It's new moon. 1 week further, we have half moon. The sun moved only a bit, but the moon is 3 zodiac signs further. Another week, we have a full moon. The moon is exactly opposite the sun. Then again, half moon, and then again, new moon. 1 month have passed now. Sun and the moon are both 1 zodiac sign further than at the beginning. For the moon phases, we need only 2 gears. They are attached to the solar and the lunar pointer. There's a crown wheel, and the lunar pointer is mounted on the gear wheel, which has the same number of teeth as a ground wheel and runs in it. Therefore, with each rotation of the lunar pointer following the solar pointer, the moon axis rotates exactly once around itself, indicating all the phases of the moon, one after the other. So, this is quite simple. As we see above, it's the same way reflected in the Antikythera mechanism. You can see clearly Earth is not in between the sun and the moon for the lunar phases or the eclipses, but below it. The sun and the moon rotating above us, as seen in reality. And in this mechanical planetarium, the Antikythera mechanism calculates exactly that, which is impossible to be shown on a heliocentric model.
This time I'd like to offer some challenges to you remaining few that are desperately clinging to this dying fad to derive some semblance of self-worth. Let's call them 10 challenges for flat earthers. Number 3, here's an idea. What if you were to actually make a prediction with your model? Like any prediction. You know, those things that you have to do in science for it to be science? Pick any celestial object, a planet, a comet, a star. Now pick any time in the future, and using only the flat earth model and nothing else, tell me where it will be at that time. If you can't do this, and I know you can't, consider admitting that your model is absolutely irrelevant. People who actually understand the geometry of the Earth and the solar system can predict a solar eclipse, specifying the start and end time down to the second and tracing its precise path down to the square mile. Doing that even a single time means the model used to make the prediction has been undeniably verified, and it's done every single time. Anyone who doesn't see the importance of that has no clue how science works.
The Antikythera mechanism is a genuine cosmograph, a machine to describe the cosmos, and also a selenograph, a machine to describe the complex movements of the moon. The Antikythera mechanism was highly accurate and could show multiple astronomical cycles. including the Metonic cycle, named after the Greek astronomer Meton. It runs for 19 years, equals to 235 lunar months. Or the Caliphic cycle, named after the Greek astronomer Caliphus. It runs for 76 years, equal to 945 lunar months of 4 Metonic cycles. The Antikythera mechanism also showed the Saros cycle, 223 lunar months, covering just over 18 years, as well as the Exaligumos cycle, equivalent to 3 Saros cycles of 54 years, which served especially to predict possible eclipses. The volume of astronomical data compiled to create a mathematical model able to summarize such cycles using mechanical gate trains is astonishing evidence of the conceptual abilities of the scholars and engineers of the antiquity. Past, present, or future, all can be predicted on the Antikythera mechanism, which is based on the geocentric stationary flat Earth model.
Antikythera mechanism can be seen as a portable planetarium, the first analog computer. By turning its crank handle, the analog computer will convert time to the position of the luminaries. The Sun and the Moon attract a 4-year athletic events, including the Olympic and the Delphic Games. But most important, it predicted solar and lunar eclipses. That's where it gets even more complicated, because there's something called the Saros cycle, which is a pattern of successive solar eclipses. One cycle takes between 12 and 1500 years to spiral from the North Pole to the South. And in each Saros cycle is about 70 or so eclipses, with each eclipse about 18 years, 10 days, and 8 hours apart. The Saros cycle is Neo-Babylonian. It was developed by the Babylonians. They kept spreadsheets recording all the eclipses to try to work out patterns in the cycle. But how did the Babylonians acquire enough measurements from both sides of the equator, spanning the whole Eurasian continent? Now that is a great mystery.
Sounds like a good conspiracy theory to me, but I think they would have had a mathematical method for tying up the lunar and solar eclipses, and they didn't need a network of astronomers all across the surface of the Earth, because the ancients noticed that every 6 months there were eclipse markers. So you only had to look for these events every 6 months, and you only had to look for a solar eclipse during a new moon, or a lunar eclipse during a full moon. So they had a very narrow window.
The device is an extremely complex analog computer, once consisting of at least 40 gears, which would have been capable of calculating anything from the exact position and size of the moon in the sky at any point during an 18-year period, to the positions of every then known planet in their orbits. It could have predicted eclipses, full moons, and even the speed of the moon across the sky, and would have told its owners the future date to Olympic Games, and much more. The mechanism is constructed mostly in bronze, in an ingenious array of interlocking gears, which use complex mathematical procedures to rectify the solar year. The amount of time it takes for the Sun to rotate around the Earth with the lunar month, the amount of time it takes for the Moon to transit between nodes in the northern and southern hemisphere in a 19-year cycle that was only rediscovered in the West during the Enlightenment age.
The various known indications of the Antikythera mechanism have been faithfully reproduced in this miniature miracle, both on the front and the back. The front face shows a calendar for the Panhellenic Games, including the cities designated to host the games. Egyptian calendar, 12 months, of 30 days each, plus the epigomenal days, which are outside of any given month, shows the position of the Sun in the ring of the zodiac constellations, and the phase of the moon with a magnificent hand aperture, which shows the moon position in the ring of the zodiac constellations throughout the sidereal month and the sidereal year. The back of the device shows the ecliptic cycle, the metonic cycle, the Saros cycle, and the exolimos cycle. This device can be used for star locations, cardinal directions, wandering stars, which are called the planets. It shows the position of the luminaries, eclipses, moon phases, and so much more.
The Antikythera mechanism reenacts or reflects what the heavens above are doing because they know everything was in cycles. In years, be it sun, the moon, the luminaries, be it metonic cycle, the sidereal cycle, the 19-year cycle, the eclipses, the retrograde, the prograde, not only for the moon but also for Venus, Mercury, and many other luminaries. The fact that 1500 years even before the idea of the globe earth was born, the ancients were using these devices, so it's very obvious which model this mechanism is based on. These people knew how these luminaries and the sun and the moon and the constellation were going in cycles. We call this cycle. That was the base of the observation for this mechanism. And we want to call them primitive for what their true geography of the creation story was. They knew what was stationary and what was in motion. That's what reflects in the Antikythera mechanism.
The Saros cycle, used for eclipse prediction, used symbols to denote the anticipated eclipses between total annular and partial solar eclipses, and total or penumbral lunar eclipses. The small dial on the right is called the exolagmus pointer, which is an 8-hour refinement across 3 Saros cycles. Because all of the dials stay synchronized, the device can be advanced or reversed until a certain input condition is met, and then the output of all the others can be read.
The front of the mechanism has 2 circular dials. The outer dial is a movable Egyptian calendar, and the inner dial is the Babylonian zodiac. There are 7 pointers for the planets all the way out to Saturn that point to the positions of the planets as viewed from the Earth along the zodiac. In the middle of the dial, there is a little moon that changes color from black to white as you rotate the mechanism. The doors and panels are all inscribed with an instruction menu. The back of the mechanism has 2 large dials. The top dial is a lunar calendar, and the bottom dial is the most important one, which is the lunar and solar eclipse dial, and that is used in conjunction with the front of the mechanism to determine whether there would be a lunar or solar eclipse.
Each gear must be utterly precise and fitted ever so perfectly in place for the device to have worked. It is in this example, in order to calculate the 19-year cycle, in which the solar and lunar years overlap, and to accurately show where the moon will be in the sky at any given point during that cycle. Gears that indicate the solar day and the lunar day are connected by a series of smaller gears, which translate the motion of the solar day into the corresponding motion of the lunar day. The mechanism also appears to contain a number of novel complications, a name given by horologists for a device within a device, which subtly changes its operation. These complications seem to be inserted into the mechanism.
We know this device is a working flat Earth model because this device has a stationary center, but everything else goes around the stationary center, which is the Earth. They're gauging all of these motions from the Earth, and they'd have nothing to show that it's moving. If it was moving, if the Earth was moving with all the other planets and the sun and the moon, it would have been represented with the 5 other planets moving around the sun. But it's not. He knew this before they built this machine. They had no clue about a heliocentric solar system Big Bang idea. Below for 5,000 years, all of recorded history. If we were moving, we wouldn't see them get to the same nighttime sky twice in a row, let alone for thousands of years. And the Antikythera mechanism wouldn't work in any location on Earth, anywhere, ever, for any reason, because it's moving. We have more of a chance of seeing the pyramid shift position than we do any of the stars ever shift in position. It's amazing that 2,000 years ago they knew this planetary motion for precision that holds up to better than today's standards. and they knew it would never change. And the Antikythera mechanism proves undeniably, and the software that runs it was based on information handed down for thousands of years.
Readings of an inscription that was on the mechanism's back cover, describing its external features and displays, it leaves little room for doubt that the front display incorporated roving pointers bearing little spheres to represent all 5 planets known in antiquity, making their apparent motions around the Earth. Each sphere is said to move through a circle belonging to the planet, strongly suggesting that a certain feature of the front display that the inscription called Cosmos was in fact the entire front dial, portraying in cross-section the Aristotelian conception of the universe.
It will track the 29.5 days. For example, you could advance until Mercury goes retrograde and see what constellation that occurs in, or see how long Venus will be visible at sunrise, or what constellation the moon will be in at the next lunar eclipse. The Antikythera mechanism is the cosmos. The cosmos is on the front of the mechanism, and the stars are represented in a more conceptual manner by the fixed graduated dial inscribed with the names of the zodiacal signs, and with key letters referring to the list of dates of first and last risings and settings of constellations in the parapegma inscription, above and below the central dials. Visual representations of the ancient geocentric cosmology in medieval and Renaissance manuscripts and artwork commonly use the zodiac in this way to stand for the hemisphere of fixed stars. A dial constructed in this manner would have elegantly combined 2 functions of the mechanism. One, as an analog computer, permitting quantitative read-off of the longitudinal positions and motions of the heavenly luminaries, and 2, as an educational wonder-working device portraying his constituent parts in their hierarchical structure and intricate movements. The entire complex of dials and pointers of the mechanism's front could by metonymy be itself called the cosmos.
The DITRH mechanism was an important precursor to modern astronomical instruments, including telescopes and planetarium projectors. The construction of the mechanism was a testament to the skill and ingenuity of ancient engineers and craftsmen. In addition to its scientific uses, the Antikythera mechanism was likely used for astrological and religious purposes, reflecting the importance of astronomy in ancient cultures.
Psychic changes that always appear at the end of one Platonic month and the beginning of the next, which are roughly every 2100 years. It seems there are changes that occur when a new constellation takes psychic dominance of the archetype, or gods as they used to be called, which bring about and accompany long-lasting transformations of the collective psyche. These changes arise in nature and are due to certain gradual transformations of the archetype. They indicate that the clock is active and it is continuously moving, passing from one cyclic division into another.
Kepler discovered a couple of hundred years ago about the elliptical movements of the luminaries. He also mentioned that the universe is a giant clock. It's a mechanism. He knows what he means. That's why he could predict or discover these motions. People think of the ancient as immature or primitive because they believed in a geocentric stationary Earth. These ancients were using a fully functional device like an Antikythera mechanism and all the science related to it, 2000 plus years before, and that was based on a geocentric stationary planet.
The Antikythera mechanism was a testament to the importance of astronomy in ancient Greek culture, reflecting the desire of Greek astronomers and mathematicians to understand the workings of the cosmos.
Though the word cosmos had a range of possibilities outside of scientific context, in Hellenistic astronomy it always meant either the aggregate of the heavens and the earth, or the heavens as distinct from the earth. All these relations are why the Antikythera mechanism is often called an analog computer, and because of its complexity and sheer number of scenarios it can replicate, is a primary reason that it remains one of the most fascinating objects of the ancient world.
The Antikythera mechanism is the cosmic planetarium. The nested geocentric cosmology had wide acceptance in Greek science from the 4th century BC on. and it was one of the parts of astronomy that an educated layman could be expected to know. He figures, for example, in the first chapter of Geminus' Introduction to the Phenomena, a popularization of astronomy from the 1st century BC. Although no pictorial representation of it survived from before late antiquity, diagrams showing the cosmos in cross-sections as a series of concentric circular rings surrounding a flat, stationary Earth frequently occur in medieval manuscripts and even in the Renaissance paintings. The outermost cycle of the fixed stars is very often represented in these pictures as a ring containing the names, symbols, or pictures of the 12 zodiacal signs, just as we find in the Antikythera mechanism.
Probably one of the most spectral things on a ship full of treasures. Some people say that watching the stars was like watching TV for the ancients. And if the narrative is accurate, I don't think that could be true because they'd be way too occupied or feeding themselves in basic survival skills back then. So watching the stars may have been entertaining, but I don't think that was the purpose. It was much more functional in their daily lives, and they had good reason, hundreds of reasons to observe and record all of the subtle motions of the cosmos for thousands of years. Culture after culture, a common thread in all of the ancient cosmoses.
The other reason that the base of the mechanism is stationary realm could be comparable to the devices like astrolabe, which is used for a particular day and the position of the luminaries above. Have inscription in Sanskrit, and the plate below represents the Bhumandala, the physical flat realm with all the movements above. And the same thing goes for the Antikythera mechanism. They say Bhumandala is representing a solar system, but the fact is that Bhumandala is a physical plane with rings of oceans and land. How is that possible in space? Antikythera mechanism base reflects the same purpose of a geocentric stationary level realm as in astrolabe.
Antikythera mechanism seems to have been the predecessor to the astronomical clocks, like the astrolabes in Prague and the Torraso in Cremona, Italy. Here we can observe how the geocentric model comes to life on a non-movable flat Earth. These clocks show the positions of the Sun, the Moon and stars, and also other cyclical formations, like day and night, lunar and solar eclipses, the seasons and solstices. In the inner circle, we see the Earth represented as a flat circle, establishing the geocentricity of the model. On the inner ring, we see the 12 calendar months represented by the symbol. On the outer ring, we see the 24 hours dividing the clock. And all the rings and pointers are in constant motion, circling the flat Earth in the center, and give the exact solar date, just like the Antikythera mechanism.
This mechanism it's an instrument of mathematical astronomy. It's intensely rich in mathematics. It's not complicated mathematics, it's simple arithmetic and it's simple geometry but put together in an absolutely beautiful way. This new paper brings together many ideas from the past, but it puts them forwards in a synthesis which shows an absolutely dazzling display of the ancient Greek cosmos, how they saw the planets, the moon and the sun.
Pattern of pillars on this wheel, it had structure. Some sort of structure that revolved like a merry-go-round. And what I ended up with was models of the planets. This is a model of the Greek cosmos, geocentric. You can think of this cover plate in the middle as representing the Earth, and everything goes round it. This is a model of the Greek cosmos, geocentric. You can think of this cover plate in the middle as representing the Earth, and everything goes round it. It's geocentric.
So what the Antikythera mechanism teaches us is that the heliocentric hypothesis is false. The sun is not the center of anything. Nothing is going around the sun. Everything is going over the surface of our flat and stationary Earth. The sun, the moon, and the stars, they move in perfect, precise order. They are absolute perfection. And they work almost like a divinely inspired clock. So this realm that we live in works in perfect order. It is not chaotic. It is not the result of some random explosion of nothing that created everything that we see. It works with precision. And what you will see if you look at the Antikythera mechanism and compare it to what we see in our observable reality is that everything moves over the surface of our flattened stationary Earth. Nothing goes around the sun. The sun is not the center. The heliocentric hypothesis is false. The geocentric hypothesis is reality. The geocentric idea of the Earth is reality, but not geocentric meaning that the Earth is a globe. The Earth is flat and stationary. The geocentric model is a flat and stationary Earth and an enclosed electrical topographical stationary plane where everything we see in the sky is moving in perfect pattern over us, replicated patterns that repeat themselves, seems like every 19 years. The sun, the moon, and the stars move under Polaris around the surface of our flat and stationary Earth.
Making 9 gears, one inside the other, and inside the other 9 times. The tolerance is not of a millimeter, the thickness of a fingernail, but 1/10 of a millimeter. More than that, there are 4 gears that are only 6 millimeters in diameter of the gears, meshed by less than half a millimeter. For the gears to operate correctly, you need to keep the radial and axial bubbled less than 0.5 of a millimeter. And you can do that by a trial and error. It takes a long time, but without a lot, to rotate the gear and without any wobble.
The marvel of engineering displayed by these people so recently out of the Iron Age is how they were able to flatten that brass and fit those gears so perfectly. The subtlety was also historically absent before it was made and again after it was made. The clocks weren't introduced for another 1400 years later. And 2 storms gave us historical luck.
You have to charge the science. I mean, theories that need other theories to support it, formulas that don't work in real life, that's not real science. But yet, you still believe this is the universe we live in. An accidental, random, chaotic, and often a meaningless existence. Over and over again, this fake world reality has been presented to you as an absolute truth. If you disconnect it from the real truth, that this is a divine creation. The fact of the matter is that everything is actually just as you see and experience it. Trust your senses. The sun and the moon are the same size, and all celestial bodies revolve around us. The geocentric system adequately explains all earthly and celestial phenomena. It tells me is that the luminaries are moving in a circling motion in relation to the Earth below them. It would be impossible to see this cycle in the heliocentric model, which has us moving in at least 4 different ways at incredible speeds through an endless space. This mechanism is based on a geocentric model, with us in the center and all luminaries circling above us in a repeatable cycle. Our whole Earth system with the sun, the moon and stars is a magnificent timepiece divinely created for us to keep count of the days, the months and the years, in such a way that we can see it with our naked eyes. Who could have taken all that knowledge and put it in a gear mechanism in such an incredible way?
Of the Earth as a bullseye, and in the middle of that Earth, or the middle of that bullseye, is Polaris up in the sky, but down below is possibly a tree, possibly a black rock, or the stump of a tree. You can hypothesize that all you want. I don't know. But what I do know from what the Antikythera mechanism shows us and what we see when we look into the sky is that everything is circling in spirograph pattern all around the surface of our flat and stationary Earth, and nothing is going around the sun. The sun is part of this realm that moves in perfect precision with everything else in the sky. It is not the center. It is not a huge ball of mass that's attracting all these other planets that are rotating and orbiting and tilting and wobbling. None of that. The heliocentric hypothesis is false. The geocentric view of this world or this realm is reality, but not a globe. The Earth is flat and stationary. Geocentric means everything is moving around the center of our flat and stationary Earth.
The geocentric stationary Earth model, common knowledge that the Earth was stationary and located at the center of the universe, with the sun, moon, and luminaries moving around it in circular paths around the Earth, was widely accepted by philosophers, astronomers, and other scholars. The mechanism also used epicyclical gears to track the motions of the planets. Epicyclical gears were used to track the movements of the planets as they moved across the sky from the perspective of an observer on Earth.
This couldn't have been achieved on the heliocentric model. Nearly all throughout the realm, ancients also built structures of amazing size and spectacle that were aligned with certain constellations. They had no idea about the heliocentric model because there simply was none. No one thought they were moving there until maniacs took over and started talking psychobabble about uncontained pressurized nuclear furnaces like the sun being chased by planets over millions of miles through billions of years. It's all caused by gravity, which is a force they still can't really explain. They have two different versions, and neither one of them makes sense. I wonder what they would think about this version of outer space we're being taught today.
Now, when they found that ancient Greek computer thing, what is that called?
The Antikythera mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, that testifies to a lost navigational skill that we have not taken account of before.
Incredibly complex, and it took a long time for them to figure out what that even is.
Yeah.
What do they think that is now?
It tracks the movements of the planets. It's a navigational device. It's a geared, cogged system that allows you to track the passage of time and figure out where you are. It's some kind of navigational device. It's not fully understood.
And how old is that?
I think that goes back to Greek times. I'm guessing here because Greek times are not of great interest to me, but I'm thinking around about 500 BC.
So at least 2,000 years old, 2,000 plus, and we know that there had to be more than one of these things.
Yes, you can't have something like that without a vast effort behind it. Human beings were working on creating this geared and cogged machinery that reflected the patterns.
Was that a recreation?
That's a recreation.
Wow.
Of something like it, yeah.
Can you buy one of those? It looks like you can buy that, dude. Bookmark that. We need one right there, right next to the plasticells.
So such a thing is a cultural artifact which doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It has to have a context. It has to have a background. And again, my suggestion would be perhaps a secret technology. It's very odd that very few of these have been found, and it may be that ship owners and navigators in Greek times were extremely careful about who they shared this technology with.
Of course.
It may have been as top secret as nuclear power is in our world today.
Oh, that makes sense.
But the fact is that then it exists, it's real, it's there, and then we must consider what's behind it. What led to that? Is that just the latest manifestation of something that goes much more deeply back into human culture? And I think that is. I suppose my main message is that we have a so far untold backstory, that we're concentrating entirely on the front story, and the backstory is missing, very largely missing from the picture. And what I've tried to do is to fill in bits of the back.
The gatekeepers are doing their job so that people really don't know the purpose of this technology like these. They give us some truth and they want you to look elsewhere. They don't want to let you know the importance and the true purpose and the meaning of these devices. So they are having these devices being produced and they don't want it. They know that the digital device cannot be relied on as they need power, but these mechanical machines don't need any power. They can see the past, present, and the future as the ancients have been doing for thousands of years. It's their job to do that, to keep you confused. They believe some would call it a navigational device, a clock, a calendar, an astronomical device, astrological, or an astro divination device, a geomancy device. The best part is, it's a combination of all the science together in one device, working in perfection, reflecting the movement, the only movement above to a geocentric stationary flatgram. A model that's been working more than 2000 plus years and will be functional in the future. That's true science, simple science. There are no fake formulas, theories, and pseudoscience. Hugo made a watch based on the Antikythera mechanism, and they wanted to do more expeditions to find more pieces so they can find what was the real purpose of these devices. They already know the purpose of these devices. The gatekeepers make sure you don't get to the core and know exactly what it is. A fully functional geocentric stationary flat Earth model.
Antikythera mechanism was a very complicated machine at the time. You had to be schooled to be able to input the correct information and in turn read it properly. According to Rabbi Eliezer, in the principle of intercalation, Joseph, who was made second in command to the Pharaoh in Egypt after he was sold by his jealous brothers, was using his skills of reading the stars. In the book of Jasher, we learn that he made use of stellar instruments. This cosmic knowledge would have been passed down from generation to generation, which would make this knowledge come from an even more ancient origin. Now that is certainly a very interesting concept to study further.
In the public school system or professors in the university system, they are literally regurgitating their indoctrination, and that's all. I would call a lot of these scientists pseudoscientists because they have a lot of claims with very little evidence, if any, especially when it comes to the shape of the Earth and with astronomy and what we see in the sky. A lot of what we see, what we observe in this realm, contradicts what we were taught to believe by these scientists. So the scientists that are in the public school system teaching kids, the professors who are in the universities teaching young adults, they have beliefs, and their beliefs have blinded them to some of the simple truths of this realm that we live in. They're blinded by bias and can't consider things that contradict their beliefs. I would ask you to just consider questioning everything. Question the shape of the Earth, question what we see in the sky with the sun, the moon, the planets, and the stars, and seeing if you can learn something new. See if you can learn something true.
How come nobody has written about it? The Greeks and Romans wrote thousands of detailed documents. Why was there no mention of the Antikythera mechanism before the sponge divers discovered it in 1901? The ancient Greeks were effectively branded as pagans and wiped out by invaders. All the Greek books were allegedly burned, and the Greek philosophers were wiped out within 3 generations. The only records we have from ancient Greece are those are through Arabic scholarly texts. So didn't the Romans keep any records of what the Greeks had done or written? And where are the artifacts? Cicero was a Roman politician and historian who once made an obscure reference to a device they had for predicting solar events. But we can't rely on his account because he often wrote with a mixture of fact and fiction. And it seems that Christianity successfully suppressed this knowledge and replaced it with pseudoscience. And this is in the history books that you can check for yourself.
Marcus Tullius wrote a book, De Silica in 54 BC. It mentioned that the Romans killed Archimedes and took away 2 mechanisms that could calculate the movement of the celestial bodies. They also took the design and the manuscript. The author thought this book was fictional until they found the Antikythera mechanism. The device was really important for the rulers. If they were so advanced in the other technologies like construction and many other sciences, this device would have been really important for them too. For the military campaign, to know if the days are longer or shorter, best days to attack, longer nights, possible weather patterns during the time of the year. And for the kings and the preachers too, it would have been also a really important device for predicting eclipses, equinox, solstice, for the rituals and ceremonies. They would actually become gods if they could predict the celestial events in advance, which used to happen in many different cultures, including the Egyptians and the Vedics. Even for the astrologists, was a really important device for predicting the client's future, depending on the dates let them see back in the past and present and the future for that particular zodiac, luminary, conjunction, horoscope, or constellations. Equally would have served for astronomers too. For the navigator, the device to locate the constellation, complementing with devices like astrolabe, compass, sextants during their trips. So this device was shared by many different cultures and civilizations in every aspect of their life.
Actually does. Here's what people had to say. I think this is a very old mechanism. It's supposed to be one of the earliest things that can be called a computer, maybe. I believe it was used to predict celestial events, maybe like when planets meet, stuff like that. Otherwise, I think it's not fully understood, and there's still some stuff we might find out about it.
The mechanism has been guarded for thousands of years by a secret sisterhood of astronomers. It is a defense against the Antikythera, a many-headed, planet-eating space gorgon. Day by day, the Kythera draws nearer, and the Antikythera mechanism has been guarded for thousands of years by a secret sisterhood of astronomers. It is our only defense.
Geography, about the sky, astronomy, about architecture all over the surface of our Earth, history, and a lot of that, as taught by the government indoctrination camps that you would call public schools, is simply not true. A lot of what we were taught from the time we were very young, I came up in the public school system, I graduated from the public school system with very high grades. But after I became an adult, I had to start putting away some of the childish beliefs that were spoon-fed to me when I was a child, like the solar system and the Earth being a spinning wet rock in outer space. Because that's not what we observe if we will actually look at the world that we live in. Our observable reality debunks the globe delusion. What we learn from the Antikythera mechanism, and as amazing as it is, the simplicity of it, as complex as it was for the alleged time that it was found, or the alleged time that was created, the simplicity of the movement of the sun and the moon and the stars over our head should tell anybody who can truly think independently that the Earth is flat and stationary. We live in an intelligently designed, enclosed system that is electrical, topographical, to stationary. The Earth is not a spinning wet rock in outer space, and we can see this clearly when we look at the Antikythera mechanism for what it is. Not just who built it or when they built it, but just the fact that there's not one thing in the Antikythera mechanism showing the Earth as one of the heavenly bodies moving around with the other heavenly bodies. That's not on the Antikythera mechanism. Why? Because the Earth is not a globe. The Earth is not in space. The Earth is not rotating, it's not revolving, it's not tilting, it's not wobbling. The Earth is an enclosed electrical, topographical, stationary plane. And you can see this clearly if you will look at what the Antikythera mechanism actually is. It shows the movement of the heavenly luminary, the sun, the moon, and the planets. The Earth is not on the Antikythera mechanism because it is not a planet.
Every 6 months, they change an hour for the daylight savings. Just that 1 hour change increases the chances of a heart attack by 40% and also causes other severe effects on the body. That is according to some scientific studies. We can imagine the consequence of not being aligned with all of the major natural cycles or celestial movements of the luminaries above us. This shows the importance of a device like the Antikythera mechanism for tracking and observations of these celestial events.
Scientific literature is clear on the fact that several psychological rhythms and collective behaviors are not only synchronized within the solar and geomagnetic activity, but also destruction in these fields can create adverse effects on human health and behavior. So why is this so important to us? The point is that on a biological level, we know that all life on Earth is linked somehow with the solar and lunar cycles, and possibly others as well. There is also a great deal of evidence that human consciousness, which plays a big role in many different sciences, including the non-material sciences, is directly connected to astronomy and astrology in very peculiar ways. The Antikythera mechanism would have served to predict all of these important cycles to help those who used it to live in harmony with the sky clock and the sky calendar. Just imagine if this technology hadn't been confiscated and suppressed 2,000 years ago. We may have advanced to a point where Columbus would have teleported to the Bahamas.
The only way to run a healthy society or a persona is to get in sync with those natural according cycles, and the creator of this mechanism and many of the ancient cultures, they were very well tuned to these cycles because that's what they've observed. All that is represented in the Antikythera mechanism, a geocentric stationary flat realm model. Imagine having natural cycles based on the absurd heliocentric model. We all would be lost. That's what they are doing, trying to uproot the natural cycles within so we stay lost, ignorant to the truth. Humans are frequency, vibration, and energy. We have the toroidal field in us, also the energy center of chakras, which spins like a wheel. It needs to be aligned and balanced for us to be in harmony with the nature and the environment. Same as the cycle wheel above us, as above, so below and within. Order, precision, and perfection. According to the Greeks and many ancient cultures, everything is connected to the wheel of nature, called wheel of time, as above, so below. And that's what it is, the Antikythera mechanism. A geocentric stationary flat realm model, a mechanical realm, a portable realm.
Construction of the mechanism reflected the advanced level of technological and scientific knowledge present in ancient times, highlighting the contributions of Greek astronomers and mathematicians to the development of Western science.
The Antikythera mechanism is a geocentric, flat, and stationary Earth machine. Modern-day science says that it was impossible for the Greeks to have something like that from 2,000 years ago. This machine is about the size of a shoebox, and inside of this machine are these intricately, perfectly working gears, dozens and dozens of gears working perfectly together to show the movement of the sun, the moon, and the planets over us. Not only does it show exactly, perfectly, precisely the movement of the sun, moon, and planets, it can also predict eclipses, some of them down to the very hour. So this machine that shouldn't exist according to science was found in a shipwreck about 120 years ago now, and they date the shipwreck to about 2,000 years ago. So someone 2,000 years ago not only had the knowledge or the experience to build a machine with extremely precise gears working perfectly together, but they also had the software to go into the hardware, the knowledge of how the sun, moon, and planets work together over this flat and stationary Earth that we live on. Flat Earth is not a claim. It's not a belief. Flat Earth is an observation with measurements that can be repeated, and it has been. So the geocentric machine called the Antikythera mechanism is another proof positive that this realm that we live in is flat and stationary. And the extreme precise movement of the sun and the moon and the stars, that was the software put into this hardware from 2,000 years ago, that still works today. 2,000 years later, you can crank up this machine up after they reconfigured it or redesigned it and they backwards engineered it to work today. You can crank it and you can still watch it working, predicting the sun, the moon, and the planets working in perfect order. This is an intelligently designed system that we live in. This realm is amazing. We talk about how amazing this Antikythera mechanism is with all these gears that are amazing. But that's just a copy of the real thing, which is this realm that we live in, which is flat and stationary. Everything we see in the sky moves perfectly over us with extreme precision. And the Antikythera mechanism, whoever built it, the hardware, whoever had the knowledge of the software to put in it and how it works to show the movement, the exact perfect movement of the sun, moon, and planets above us, it's an amazing machine. But more amazing is the message that it gives to people today, that the Earth is flat and stationary.
This shows that the ancients had a lot more going on than we're being taught or led on to. They were much more harmonious with nature, both on the ground and in the sky. It was a clock for them to days when to do things according to what the sky was telling them. And I would imagine that they gauged a great deal about their everyday life according to the Antikythera mechanism and the sky clock that it is representing. Love, agriculture, ceremonies, festivals, traveling, communication, seasons, animal migrations.
Nature and ignore the creator. This marvel is work of a creator, an intelligent design. Where there is an order, technique, and organization, behind there is a designer, an intelligent designer. Nothing comes out of casualty. A tree don't fall and make itself into a cabin. You cannot put million alphabet in a bucket and a book will come out. Where there is order, there is intelligence. That's exactly what our realm is. Order, not chaos. The laws of mathematics are supposed to be formed by Newton and Kepler, but they discovered the law of mathematics that the star and the luminary use. By observing the star and the luminaries, order, symmetry, precision, and geometry. Newton and Kepler did not create anything. The star moved according to the law of mathematics even before these people were born. And that's exactly what we see reflected in the Antikythera mechanism. Order, functioning in perfection, secret geometry, and intelligent design, and the designer of this realm.
There are hundreds and hundreds of reasons to live in harmony with nature and this beautiful creation without the concern of treating the clock and living on a hamster wheel in the manufactured lab race, where time is constantly pressed on us to hurry, don't delay. This is the heliocentric solar system Big Bang model. They was flying around out of space, snowing nowhere as nothing around us ever changes position in the sky for thousands of years. It's not a huge surprise that an Antikythera mechanism story is absent from history. Another example of something significantly absent from the narrative is the explanation for star forts. That just doesn't line up. There have been so many misconceptions about history that have been retold after the many decades. This may be one of the greatest mysteries ever told, because history seems to be nothing more than a bunch of stories that didn't happen being told by people who weren't there. Given the fact that there's only one, and the complexity and precision of this and the absence of it in history, this device displays amazing technologies. 30 gears working in unison around a central point, the Earth, the realm, showing the phases of the moon in a separate gear system sideways, transferring mechanical energy to the world. Tell what they really know about why it was so important to the ancients to have such a perfect astronomical timepiece. So look at what we now call outer space.
Symbols we see in different cosmologies or texts and scriptures. To begin with, in the Masonic flat earth model, there's a projection of the black sun that projects from below the earth, from the center, all the luminaries, and that black sun is shown as a wheel or as a gear. In the Slavic cosmology, the tree of life, the central mountain, similar to Mount Meru in other cosmologies, this tree of life rotates. The roots come from below the earth. The trunk and the branches shown as rotating, which also gives us as a mechanical movement. The Vedic cosmology, the Mount Meru is represented to be attached to the luminaries above with an invisible string. And the whole movement through that central shaft again, showing a mechanical movement. The electromagnetic field of the earth being greater than the luminaries, so all of them rotate around us, floating in ether, always connected to the magnetic north or center, same as the central shaft as it works in the Antikythera mechanism. So there are many other cosmologies which reflect that, and the importance of the North Pole can be seen everywhere.
It's a clock! Oh my god, it's a clock! Virus, you're a genius! You're a genius! This entire arena seems to be laid out like a clock.
In the ancient times, the ancient cultures, traditions, the seers, sages, renunciants, mendicants, sadhus, and holy men were respected for their unusual ability to perceive reality beyond what the ordinary man could perceive. In today's modern culture, Only those who have been indoctrinated, programmed by the controller's bogus education system are respected, even though they are in deepmost illusion. The ancient men of knowledge were far more advanced than are the illusioned teachers of today. The ancients had these remarkable abilities that have been by and large lost in this fallen age of Kali Yuga. The ancients would gaze into the sacrificial fires, which would open their third eye. It would open their chakras, a kundalini process. They would also sun gaze, and they would gaze at the night sky, and realizations would come to them. This subtle science process is possible today as well, but so few endeavor to achieve this. Few are even aware of these timeless, subtle sciences, which are far more profound than today's solely materialistic sciences. Therefore, the ancients possessed a far deeper understanding of the universe, the one song, and its workings, and they could tap into far deeper esoteric knowledge. The ability to construct the Antikythera mechanism is no doubt a result of knowledge gained from these ancient practices, where the ancients could tap into this far deeper, far more profound wisdom and knowledge. In doing so, they were able to create such a brilliant mechanism that was so incredibly precise, and which can only work on a flat, stationary plane. This truth, this reality, can no longer be hidden.
It's still functional today, with no 5G, no Wi-Fi or CGI needed. The Antikythera mechanism was designed and built as a working model for a geocentric, stationary, flat Earth. We live inside a beautiful realm that was designed as a timepiece with mathematics and fractals built within everything in the fabric, and the sky is its only tangible calendar.
The mechanical art has made the sun take its course. This fashioned another zodiacal cycle by human cogitation. It has shown the moon to restore from its eclipse by the light of the earth. It has set in revolution a machine pregnant with the real cosmos. Horrible realm, a mechanical realm. Sky, a compendium of all that is mirror of the nature and the image of the ether and its unimaginable mobility. What a thing it is for human beings to make this thing, the Antikythera mechanism, a geocentric stationary flat realm model.